morning, everyone, and welcome back to the farm. Somehow we managed to dodge a bullet at the main farm here last night in the form of some very severe storms. At the tail end of the last video, I mentioned how the forecast was looking pretty grim, and for a few areas in central Illinois, it definitely turned out to be so. Somehow we were dealt a pretty good hand here. We only had 3/10 of an inch of rain. So it is going to make a wet situation already wetter. We're gonna play in the mud today, or attempt to finish a couple more grain bins and see where that takes us. One of my favorite features on this high dollar S780 combine is the additional grain storage option, or the overflow on the back. There's also some on the front. You spend a lot of money on a combine, you get cool features like this. I wanted to take a quick break from all this awesome harvesting action to thank our sponsor for this video, Canadips. Canadips are CBD infused pouches. They're tobacco and nicotine free. They're a great alternative to chewing tobacco, which is something that is heavily used in the agriculture and outdoor industries. Canadips is made from 100% American grown hemp. It's full of all of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. You can look at the code on the back of every can and see the batch analysis to make sure it has nothing that's going to cause you any trouble. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CBD, it has a variety of benefits. It is shown to combat stress, anxiety, and chronic pains and leave you relaxed. Not only is it very beneficial, it also comes in some very tasty flavors. I highly suggest that if this is something that interests you, you head over to canadips.com, follow the link here, or find it yourself. Use code DOLE, D-O-L-E, at checkout. Get yourself 20% off and try these products out. I appreciate Canadips for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. Hydraulic oil is adequate in the 670. I would expect that because I put 4 gallons in it yesterday. Nothing quite like putting a bunch of hoops to jump through before you can get to your oil level. Let's see what the dipstick says. I'm not sure if the 670 will even see any action today. Okay, plenty of oil. I saw the funniest video on TikTok today of a farmer with a John Deere combine just like this, driving away from the fuel barrel with the hose still attached. I sent the video to my dad and told him that that's gonna be him if he doesn't slow down a little bit. There's a tiny bit of concern on the farm here with all the moisture we've had and what's in the forecast that we may not even be able to use our subsoiler. Spend all this money on this rig and don't even have the ground conditions to run it. That's not to mention, we're not exactly sure how this is going to mesh with an anhydrous ammonia application. If we cannot smooth out the passes and minimize the amount of soil disturbance, we may have to either run it on our corn stalks or figure out some other way to use it on our bean stubble. I don't think you want to run it after you put anhydrous on because you really do not want to disturb the soil crust. We'll figure something out, I guess. The North 36-foot bin here at the main farm is the last thing with any empty space for corn. Maybe 2 to 3 rings left, so I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 bushels of corn to put in there. Obviously, it's never an issue to run out of storage so early in the season. We're gonna try and fill this today, get the sanctity of having all of our bins at the main farm filled up. And I think we'll probably end up filling the old harvesters, or at least these 2. Those 3 haven't been filled in a long time. What are you doing?
Filling up the water.
You still burning it?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was really low last time.
Interesting. The boss took the 780 to the field to see if it's dry enough. I think that our soybeans would actually test moisture-wise today. It's 70+ degrees, sun shining, the wind's blowing. The problem is ground conditions may not be adequate to cut soybeans. The unfortunate reality is that our fields we got planted last are usually our last beans to mature, typically because they're also our wettest fields. So, probably not gonna be able to do that. If we do though, never complain about getting soybeans out of the ground. Green means go, possibly. I'll refrain from commenting on ground conditions. Mudfest 2021 continues on today. Will the combine operator spill grain for the 50th day in the row? Will Andy get stuck in the grain cart? Stay tuned to find out. Gotta be sloppy. In other news, water is in fact wet. This soybean field's pretty dry though. Oh, crispy. Throw them in the moisture tester real quick. Probably 15 to 16%. With environmental conditions like we have right now, they may cut in a few hours. We would definitely set the corn head out in the field to finish cutting these beans. If the weather stays like this, those beans will probably cut in another hour and a half or 2 hours. Predicting the weather is always a very big if. My question for you fellow farmers or YouTube agriculture experts: if the forecast is looking wet, the ground is moderately wet as it is, do you go ahead and pick in subpar conditions, or do you roll the dice hoping it's going to get dry? A lot of pros and cons to be weighed. In today's episode of What Not to Do on the Farm, Andy shows you what wet harvesting can do to your fields. That's what that four-wheel drive's for. I can clearly tell based on the seesawing nature of my travels right now that the combine operator had the decency to put all the weight on the back. Always love when they do that. What you're seeing out here is a very advanced, time-tested agricultural strategy. If you push the mud down far enough, you get the water squeezed out of it, it dries faster. Science. There goes Dad, mountain climbing the terraces with a 90% full hopper. It's exactly why we have that overflow space on the back of the combine. If we're not careful, we're going to be putting new snouts on that corn head too. The question is, do I tell him or not tell him that he's doing that? All to pick less corn than what he's spilling. That finishes the field though. I was somewhat worried that we were going to get rained out for a third time. Isn't there like a 3 strikes and you're out policy? You don't get it in the third try, you just have to disc it under and call it good. My math shows 239.66 dry. Not too shabby for this old farm. That's decent corn. Probably the best we've raised here. Oh man, I'm going right through the wettest part of the field. That was a mistake. I'm headed to dump the last bit of grain off from this field on the truck and we can put it in the bin. Katie, my sister, for those of you who seem to still be confused about that, our other combine operator, is picking up my dad and they're gonna go scout another cornfield about a mile to the west of here. Notoriously a wet hole of a farm, but we think it may harvest. We'd already kind of given it the green light this morning based on Dad and I's initial reports. However, seeing what we saw here in this field in terms of ground conditions, we're going to double check that it's dry enough to harvest. Better safe than sorry. There's a surprising development. Only 45 minutes later since we checked these beans, we're gonna try and cut a sample. I'm still tickled to death that these beans this green could ever have been ready to harvest. They have been on multiple occasions though over the last few weeks. Probably would have been cut if we had 2 combines. We do now, but we didn't then. I don't know. I think they're still above 15%. That's where I'd put my money. The combine does not sound to be struggling near as much to process these beans as it did the last few times we tried them. Although they may have not put the knives back in the chopper, which is probably what caused a lot of the tree trimming noises we heard on previous renditions of this field. I take that means that they're too wet. What'd they test?
16.4.
Huh. Whew, thank goodness those were too wet. For a minute there I was concerned I was gonna have to switch the grain cart back to soybeans. A lot of work. Yeah, the ground is pretty firm on this field to say the least. We're not concerned about passability at all. If I'm sinking 4 inches to the ground, whew, grain cart's gonna have a bad time out here. This farm is entirely planted in 2 DeKalb numbers, one being 6357 around the outside on the end rows, and on the inside we planted 6253, I think is what it's called. Again, another field where I've been surprised about all the tops being out on the DeKalb corn. Usually this is a Pioneer thing. Ears are pretty good, so we can't complain. And the overall stock quality's good, just up top is not so pretty. What did I tell you guys about coming in the tractor cab with dirty boots on? Do better. Shouldn't take much of this mud fest to fill that bin, which will completely shut us down until we get that auger moved. I've had enough of this mud. As a matter of fact, I was ready for it to be done the first day I drug ruts out in the field. Now I'm literally plowing my way through this one. You hate to see that. At least we've got the four-wheel drive tractor on the grain cart, because that 8310R I used to use would have been stuck 20 times by now. I told you it wouldn't take long to fill that bin. I would assume because the trucks are backed up that they're moving the auger. Well, more accurately, they're moving the drive over to the other bin site because we have our second auger waiting there for us. The nice part about having two of them. Windows down type of day. Slightly regret having the windows down because someone ran over a skunk where I just drove by. Very fragrant, to say the least. Here we are. We're pretty far back. Back up just an inch. That cannot be good for the frame of this thing, but that's the way we do it. A very expensive fuel gauge. Just clip right there. Whoa!
Oh, ho! Turn it up. Let's go. We need to move it back.
Oh, can Chris just back onto it?
No, you can't back on it.
Giving these soybeans another shot. Didn't dry off much. 15.5, 15.1, 14. No, maybe. No. Probably too wet to cut them. The moisture results aren't surprising. It's one of those things though where you really won't know unless you try. We got rain coming in tomorrow. I'd rather have beans cut than corn picked. Looks like we're gonna be picking corn though. Not exactly sure where he's going. If I'd known he was moving, I wouldn't have gotten out. This combine's a freak. Always opening up the panels on its own. I call this one desperate combine driver gets in the grain cart. I would happily let someone take my job, yet no one ever seems to want to. I'm just the poor grain cart guy. Something definitely went down on this combine while I was gone, because that grain tank is so full it looks like it's gonna pop. What happens when no one's here is no one's business, I guess. See that over there? That is another combine running. See that over there? That is a second combine running. I just want the record to note that we're not living in some little microcosm here in terms of our management practices. It's the lesser of two evils. Do you sit here and wait for perfect conditions, or run the risk of it getting even worse next time you have to come out here and really don't have a choice about harvesting the field? You'd rather get it out when there's somewhat of a window, even if it's not super pretty. Now, I'm not saying that's what you want to do on your farm, but it's what we're doing here. Regardless of all that field condition jazz, just happy to be out here farming. And besides, it's golden hour. Just another situation where I'm gonna have to put my foot in my mouth. It is very wet, and I did not account for it in this spot. The grain cart is completely loaded, and we're buried in pretty deep. I don't think a combine is gonna pull us out here. And we are way in the ground. I could keep trying to go back and forth, but I'm afraid that I'm gonna dig myself even deeper of a hole. The problem I'm running into is that the grain cart has plowed itself so deep in the ground that I can't get over it. Like, I've made myself an obstacle here, especially on that side, that the tractor can't pull out of. We are stuck down to the gearbox. We're way in the ground right here. That is not good. This may require the 620. Oh boy. Well, now there's definitely not any chance of me getting my bonus. That's messy. Oh man. It is never good when these boys come out. This is what we bought this 620 horsepower tractor for, wasn't it? In hindsight, this is what I get for making the comment about the 8R tractor probably being stuck 10 times now. I jinxed us. This one's on me. I'm gonna go ahead and preface this now. Whatever you see from this point on, maybe don't try at home. It's the other side that's...
I don't know where to tie onto. That's going to be the
I
problem.
think there's tow hooks on the frame underneath somewhere, unless I've got them mudded in. Wait a minute, when you pull something like this, don't you want to hook up to the rear axle of the tractor? There's the hurdle we have to overcome.
Can you hear me?
10-4.
Don't speed up, just go. Second gear, speed it up. Speed it up.
We're clear.
Speed it up. Okay, stop.
We appear to be back on steady ground. All it took was 600 horsepower plus. There's actually no problem at all when I had a little bit extra traction on the front end like that. And it appears that we didn't pull anything in two. I believe the reason there's no tow hooks on the front of a four-wheel drive tractor is because you're supposed to hook up to the rear. You always run the risk of pulling the tractor apart. Thank you for your service, John Deere 9620R. That is the second thing it's done on this farm other than use that subsoiler one time to set it. Quite the welcoming party here. Some normalcy. Just loading trucks again. One major thing we had working against us there that I failed to mention, purely for my own peace of mind, is that we were right on top of an anhydrous ammonia pipeline. I don't know how far away we were from it. We were on top of a hill, so I'd like to think it was at least 4 or 5 foot in the ground. Could have been much closer. I guess if we have very good corn there next year, we'll know that we tapped into the good stuff. I would venture to say that was enough commotion for the boss to want to call it a night. What can we learn here? Maybe don't fully load the grain cart and drive it through a wet spot in the field. Now the real question I have for you farming experts is, if we had tracks on the grain cart, would that have happened? Dad and I have kind of been spitballing whether or not tracks are worth the money on a grain cart, especially when we're harvesting like this. That was just one spot out of many where I made a big mess. I've never gotten the tractor itself stuck, but I've drug ruts for a quarter of a mile in some fields trying to get this corn crop out. The real takeaway message here, folks, is that some days you're the hammer and some days you're the nail. And today I'm kind of somewhere in between. I'm like where the hammer meets the nail. So that could be good or bad. We picked more corn than we planned on. I'll take that as a victory. We're gonna have to run the disc ripper out here because those ruts are deep. It's been an interesting day to say the least. I would probably put that occurrence on the signs that you might want to quit for the night list, because that's what we're gonna do. Katie and her fancy combine with 4-wheel drive that never gets stuck. Must be nice. Maybe we're just in the wettest field around, because there's a lot of other combines going. Katie, as a combine operator, you have a fiduciary duty to prevent me from making those kinds of mistakes.
The grain cart operator, it's your fiduciary duty not let me run over. You set me up yesterday.
That was not on purpose. No one saw that one. Isn't it nice when you make mistakes when no one's around?
Yeah, I was hoping it was you in the truck.
Probably ought to dig that mud out in the morning. Here comes the last samurai. Alrighty folks, we're back home safe and sound. I guess we should count our blessings. We didn't break anything. We didn't pull the tractor in two. We didn't pull the tongue off the grain cart or flip it or anything. We may have learned a lesson. That is in fact the wettest spot of the field. No need to ask that question anymore, we just know. That being said, I will probably find out tomorrow whether or not I'm going to be looking for a new job. I definitely do think that is more than enough farming for one video. If not for you, definitely for me. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!